The rise of the Eurasian axis. Greetings, digital citizen. This report will synthesize the latest analyses to provide a comprehensive overview of the evolving global landscape. A new global dynamic is emerging, driven by a confluence of economic, geopolitical, and technological forces. The recent summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, in Tianjin, China, has been described by some analysts as a meta-historical event, marking a significant shift in the international order. Movements in the economy. The global economic landscape is undergoing a profound transformation, with its center of gravity shifting eastward. According to data compiled from the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the CIA's World Factbook, China has now surpassed the United States as the world's largest economy when measured by purchasing power parity. Following this trend, India is now ranked as the third largest economy, with Russia in fourth place, displacing several G7 nations in the process. This redistribution of economic power is a primary driver of the changing geopolitical dynamics. The BRICS nations, an economic bloc consisting of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have collectively surpassed the G7 in terms of their total economic output. This bloc is increasingly seen as the economic engine of an emerging multipolar world. In a direct challenge to the Western-dominated financial architecture, the new development bank, established by the BRICS, and a newly announced development bank by the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, are positioning themselves as alternatives to institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Although the United States remains a formidable economic power, it faces significant challenges. The country is currently grappling with a massive national debt exceeding $37 trillion, with annual interest payments on this debt approaching $1 trillion. Recent economic data, as highlighted by geopolitical analyst Pedro Baños, paints a bleak picture for the U.S. economy. In August 2025, the economy added only 22,000 jobs, a figure that fell dramatically short of the Trump administration's forecast of 75,000, with the majority of these new positions being part-time. The overall unemployment rate has risen to 4.3%, its highest level since 2021. Youth unemployment for individuals aged 16 to 24 has reached a staggering 10.5%. The manufacturing sector has experienced a decrease of 12,000 jobs, a stark contrast to the projected creation of 5,000 positions. Over the last 4 months, excluding the healthcare sector, the U.S. economy has lost a total of more than 140,000 jobs. The housing market is also showing severe signs of stress, with mortgage applications having fallen by 34%, a level of decline worse than that seen during the 2008 financial crisis. Compounding these domestic problems, the use of the dollar as a weapon through international sanctions has driven numerous countries to seek alternatives, fueling a gradual but steady process of de-dollarization. In this economic realignment, Europe is widely seen as the biggest loser. The continent faces a severe energy crisis after cutting off its supply of Russian gas. This has triggered a process of deindustrialization, particularly affecting Germany, the continent's traditional economic powerhouse. The German industry is now paying up to 4 times more for energy, a burden that is pushing its economy towards recession. The European Union is also struggling with deep internal divisions and a lack of clear strategic vision. France faces serious governance problems and the possibility of a motion of censure against its government, while the United Kingdom is experiencing such deep economic distress that it may require financial assistance from the International Monetary Fund. This narrative of Western economic decline contrasts with the emergence of an alternative system centered around the BRICS nations and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. A key element of this shift is de-dollarization, a trend that has been accelerated by the use of Western currency as a weapon and the seizure of foreign reserves belonging to countries like Russia, Venezuela, and Iran. In response, the BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization are actively developing new financial instruments and trade mechanisms designed to bypass the US dollar. A monumental development in this energy and economic reorientation is the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline. Confirmed during the recent Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit, this pipeline will transport 50 billion cubic meters of natural gas annually from the Yamal Peninsula in Russia through Mongolia and into China. This project effectively redirects a massive volume of energy that previously flowed to Europe, consolidating a long-term energy partnership between Moscow and Beijing while further isolating Europe economically. India's energy policy also reflects this shift towards the east. Before 2022, India imported less than 1% of its oil from Russia, a figure that has now increased to more than 40%. An integral, albeit often hidden component of the global financial system is the illicit drug trade, estimated at $1 trillion annually. Denise Small of the Schiller Institute alleges that this international trade is managed by the same large financial institutions located in the City of London and on Wall Street. As evidence, she cites the case of HSBC, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, which was investigated by the U.S. Senate in 2012 and found to have deliberately laundered approximately $60 billion for the Sinaloa cartel. According to a statement by former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder, these banks were deemed too big to prosecute because doing so would risk the collapse of the entire international financial system. The analysis concludes that the war on drugs is therefore not a genuine effort to combat trafficking, but rather a political tool used to justify intervention in sovereign nations that do not align with Western geopolitical interests. In the geopolitical sphere, the unipolar moment that began after the end of the Cold War is now considered over. The world is rapidly moving towards a multipolar order characterized by several distinct centers of power. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin is seen as a key moment in the consolidation of this new order. A powerful symbol of this shift was the image of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi holding hands with Russian President Vladimir Putin, interpreted as a sign of the growing alignment between the major Eurasian powers. The concept of the Global South is also gaining prominence, referring to a flexible coalition of developing countries seeking to assert their independence from the West. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the BRICS are seen as the main institutional expressions of this global trend. The United States is reported to be struggling to adapt to this new reality. The Biden administration's attempts to isolate Russia and China are considered to have had the opposite effect, bringing the two nations closer together. U.S. tariff policies have also pushed India away, driving the South Asian giant closer to the Russia-China axis. The war in Ukraine has served as an important catalyst for these geopolitical changes, exposing the limits of Western power and accelerating the decline of the U.S.-led international order. The sanctions imposed by the West against Russia have failed to paralyze its economy, and instead have strengthened its ties with China and other non-Western powers. The future of the international order is likely to be characterized by a tripolar dynamic, with the United States, China, and a resurgent Russia as its main poles. However, some analysts, such as Alfredo Jalife, argue that the United States should not be excluded from this new arrangement, suggesting that a spirit of Alaska, referring to potential cooperation between the United States, Russia, and China in the Arctic, could be a path to ensuring global stability. The Western response to this shift in the balance of power has been described as increasingly aggressive. Described by one analyst as the lashes of a wounded animal, the United States is intensifying its pressure on Latin America. According to an analysis by the program Base America Latina, the recent visit by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio to Mexico and Ecuador fits within this context. Although the official purpose of the visit was to improve cooperation on security and counter narcotics, the underlying objective is seen as an attempt to counter the influence of extracontinental actors like China and ensure regional alignment with U.S. strategic objectives. In Mexico, the visit was characterized by a diplomatic balancing act. The government of President Claudia Sheinbaum, enjoying high domestic approval and record foreign investment, has asserted a policy of cooperation based on mutual respect and non-subordination. However, U.S. pressure continues, exemplified by Rubio's comments in Mexico City. While acknowledging Mexico's efforts, he significantly mentioned the recent U.S. military action of sinking a ship in the Caribbean that allegedly carried members of the Tren de Aragua gang, which the United States has designated as a terrorist organization. Given that the United States has similarly designated 6 Mexican cartels as terrorist groups, Rubio's statement that it can happen again is widely interpreted as a veiled threat. In Ecuador, the dynamic was markedly different. The government of Daniel Noboa is seen as completely subordinated to Washington, having effectively turned the country into a U.S. enclave. Noboa's government has aligned with the United States by designating the Venezuelan government as a narco-terrorist entity, and, just before Rubio's visit, replaced its entire high military command with figures who have close ties to the Pentagon. This pressure campaign culminates in a direct military posture towards Venezuela. The Trump administration has sent naval ships to the Caribbean and has explicitly threatened to shoot down any Venezuelan military aircraft that approaches them. Following an overflight by a Venezuelan F-16, President Trump has reportedly ordered his generals to prepare options for military strikes against Venezuelan territory, with the ostensible purpose of attacking drug cartels. This is seen as a measure to prevent Chinese influence and secure access to Venezuela's vast oil reserves, particularly as China sends its own oil platforms to the region. In the Middle East, the conflict in Gaza is unequivocally described as a genocide carried out by Israel with the full backing of the United States. Denise Small argues that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu could be stopped with a single phone call from Washington, but that the political will to do so is absent. The long-term strategic goal is perceived as the realization of a greater Israel, which would expand its territory into the West Bank, Lebanon, and Syria, and serve as a permanent point of instability and control for Western interests in the region. According to this analysis, the ultimate strategic objectives of this induced chaos are Russia and China. Technology has become another key arena of competition in the 21st century. China has made notable progress in recent years and is now a leader in many critical technologies. According to a report from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, China leads the world in 157 out of 164 critical and emerging technologies. Artificial intelligence is seen as a particularly important area of competition. Russian President Vladimir Putin has declared that whoever dominates AI will rule the world. China is heavily investing in AI and is already a global leader in many areas of this technology. The United States is also a major player in AI but faces stiff competition from China. In the crucial field of hypersonic missiles, Russia is considered the leader with its Oreshnik missile credited as a game-changer in the Ukraine conflict, closely followed by China. The development of these missiles, which are virtually impossible to defend against, is a significant shift in military affairs. Russia is the world leader in this technology, with China in second place. The United States has reported difficulties with its own hypersonic missile tests and is falling behind in this crucial area. Although the United States remains a superpower in the civilian AI sector, Pentagon sources acknowledge that China has a significant advantage of up to 2 decades in military applications of AI. The race for technological supremacy is not just about economic competition, it's also about military power. The future of the world will be shaped by the interaction of these powerful economic, geopolitical, and technological forces. As the old order is dying, the new one is struggling to be born. The transition is likely to be turbulent, but it also presents opportunities for a more just and equitable world order. The main danger, as articulated by Denise Small, is that the dying empire, identified as the financial oligarchy of London and Wall Street, will not go quietly. Faced with the loss of their control, they might resort to a global military confrontation to maintain their dominance, a conflict that could easily escalate into a thermonuclear exchange. The proposed way forward, inspired by the Peace of Westphalia of 1648 that ended a century of religious wars in Europe, is a new international architecture of security and development. This would not be a world divided into competing blocks, but a polyphonic system, a term used by Russian President Vladimir Putin. Envisioned is a world order based on the principle that the development of one's neighbor is a prerequisite for one's own security and prosperity. A system that fosters the creative potential of all humanity rather than the speculative gains of a selected few. The challenge remains whether Western leaders can be convinced to join this new composition, or whether, in their refusal, they will bring down the entire concert hall in ruins. 1. Triumphant Troika of RIC, Russia, India to China, in Tianjin. The great mistake of the United States, Alfredo Jalife. 2. Imposing dissuasive military parade of China. See Vis Pacem Para Bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. Alfredo Jalife. 3. The United States lashes out like a wounded animal. 4. Mexico is a prize and it is written with P for Petroleum. Jalife. 5. China, Russia, and India unite. This is the new front in global geopolitics. 6. China shows its military muscle and scares the world. 7. Marco Rubio visits Mexico and Ecuador amid offensive in the Caribbean. What is he seeking? Base LatAm. 8. The U.S. economy is sinking. 9. Alfredo Jalife. Analysis of the global geopolitical strategy of the United States, May 5, 2025. 10. Alfredo Jalife. I do not see a new world order. We are heading towards a tripolar world. Do not forget the United States. 11. Alfredo Jalife. I am not so sure that we will reach peace in the Ukraine war. 12. Alfredo Jalife. Who lost India? Geopolitical analysis. 13th secret oil agreement between Trump and Putin, according to Wall Street Journal. Alfredo Jalife. 14. Arctic Polar Circuit. G3 de Estados Unidos, Rusia, China. Alfredo Jalife. Radar geopolítico. 15. Jalife analyzes the meeting between China, India, and Russia. 16. Alfredo Jalife. Russia and China have managed to win over India. This is the total decline of the United States. 17. 5/09/25. Alfredo Jalife analyzes the meeting between Russia, India, and China. 18. Geopolitical future of Venezuela and Mexico. The oil factor. Alfredo Jalife on Telereportaje. 19. Impressive alliance between China and India that can reform the world. Alfredo Jalife. 20. Indonesia is burning. Behind the unrest is its entry into BRICS. Alfredo Jalife.